So, Pawan, one of the emerging trends in mobile money worldwide is the growth of over-the-counter transactions, transactions which are conducted at the agent by people who perhaps do not have a wallet, a registered wallet, but still want to send money. If we take the provider's perspective, what's driving that? Why do providers default to over-the-counter transactions?
I think there's been a change in the way people are looking at what the mobile money business can do for them. So a provider is also driven by a motive saying, can we get scale quickly? Can we get large amount of throughputs into the business very quickly so that the results can be seen by the top management, and therefore they can get a longer lease on what else do they need to do with their customers,
right.
When the customers start transacting.
And I think in Pakistan, Telenor saw it as an opportunity to move quickly beyond their existing customer base, and thus an opportunity to grow the business quicker. Is that a sound strategy from your perspective?
It depends. So as a first mover, it could be why, because they could get other customers onboarded who are not their own customers. But what that does in the process is that the provider is blindsided by who actually the customer is.
Right.
It's because the agent is not trained to capture either on paper or on the system that who is the initiator of the transaction and who is the eventual receiver of the transaction.
Right.
So that leads to a blindside situation, which in the longer run is uncomfortable, is because you don't know who your customer is.
Right. But in Pakistan, they at least have to use the national identity number at both ends of the transaction, if I understand correctly.
Right.
But what you're saying is because we don't have the mobile number, we can't contact them.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes. Yes. And in other countries that we've seen, we see this trend very dominant in Cambodia, for example. In Bangladesh, 22% of the population are using mobile money, but only 3% of them are registered. So we can see that over-the-counter transactions are immensely popular. Why do you think that is at the customer level?
Graham, the over-the-counter transactions are helping meet a need of the customer. The need is that can I send money back home in a very easy way. A large part of that population in the developing world is uneducated, unfortunately, at the bottom of the pyramid. They have, due to time, started to understand how to use the phone to make basic calls and receive calls. They don't use SMSs or texting. They don't use other advanced features as such. So therefore, they have not been able to adopt this. But this could be a stepwise process where the customer, once it is comfortable in using a channel, will formally adopt it at a later point of time when he sees either the agent or his other friends doing the transaction himself. So that's the impact on the customer, where he says that I might not be the right guy for the time being to use the service. So if you go down absolutely at the bottom of the pyramid, he'll have challenges. But if this is aimed at slightly higher above than that, then they may be able to adopt it far quicker. Essentially saying which is the target market we are trying to attract this service to.
So really we're talking about the need to segment the market.
Yes.
We need to change or differentiate between those that are illiterate, technology shy, and those that are perhaps better educated and more willing to accept technology and thus begin to make transactions basis their own phone.
That's correct.
Because I think what I understand of this is increasingly people not only go because they go to agents to do the transactions for them because they are illiterate and uncomfortable with the technology, but also because they're worried about sending the money to the wrong number. And if the agent does it, they won't pay the agent until they've called the recipient and said, have you received the money?
Yep.
Whereas if they do it off their own phone and they make a mistake, particularly where there aren't check digit systems or where the numbers are not reflected in the address book, and thus the name of the recipient comes up, there's quite often errors made, and then poor people have very little recourse to get that money back again if it's been sent to the wrong number.
You make a very interesting point here, Graham, and the point is, I'm alluding to, is that the design of the product needs to be done on the basis of which segment are you targeting.
Mm-hmm.
So can you foolproof the product in a way that the guy who doesn't know how to use it can use it without failure?
Yeah.
So what we've seen up to now is that there's a standard product available. It's not segmented as per customer base, and they're expecting that by doing other things, we will get all customers, all segments to use the same product.
Right.
In the same, which is a graphic, interface, or what works for a guy who's educated might not work for a guy who's at the bottom of the pyramid and illiterate.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, I think, a differentiation of how the product is viewed on the front end, versus you could have the same system at the back end, but the front end could be made much simpler.
Right.
And much more straightforward I'll give you an example. Most people who are illiterate cannot read an SMS after the receipt of the transactions done.
Yeah.
Right? Now there's a very simple solution to this. And the solution is that once a trigger hits the system at the back end, it can generate an outbound call to the customer to say that your transaction is being done.
Yeah.
And follow that up with an SMS. At least he knows that the transaction is being done.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is a tweak on what we call as human-centric design.
Yeah.
On how the guy who's actually at the bottom of the pyramid going to use the product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you might have a tick box in your form to say that he's illiterate, hence he wants a call, and the other people may not want to have it, so that's unticked.
Yeah.
That's just a design piece.
Agreed. And also, I mean, I think even the design of the SMS that comes back confirming the receipt, if we simplify it enough so that the number in terms of the amount sent is clearly, not lost in lots of other text.
That's correct.
It will help a great deal. So I think that's absolutely right.